Discover the incredible truth. A father's touch leads to a transformative miracle. After 30 years, Jake Reynolds spent decades elbow-deep in grease, the rhythmic clank of tools drowning out a lifetime of lost dreams. As a child, he'd savored the smell of engine oil and the sight of his father meticulously guiding him through the mechanics of life and cars. But those days had faded, replaced by the relentless routine of the Reynolds family garage. Now, with his father's spirit guiding his hands but his dreams buried beneath layers of regret, Jake faced an uncertain future. News had rippled through the quiet Midwestern town like wildfire. A powerful automotive corporation aimed to swallow the community whole. Its glossy brochures promised progress, but threatened the heart of Jake's existence. He could see it, a dark cloud hovering over the family business that had stood firm for generations, propped up by sweat and the belief that hard work was enough. The garage was a legacy. It was a life. But now it hung by a thread, overshadowed by corporate greed. As he worked on rusted engines, visions of his father's unwavering support played on loop in his mind. Jake could hear his father's voice, urging him to be more, to reach for something monumental. But fear gnawed at him. Could he transform the remnants of his father's dreams into reality? Then one day, an innocuous search for tools turned into a life-altering discovery. Shoved behind a stack of old tires lay a dusty blueprint, its edges frayed but still legible. It was an ambitious design for an eco-friendly engine, a tangible manifestation of hope his father had envisioned, a miracle of sorts. Excitement surged before it was pierced by a stab of self-doubt. Was he really the man to bring this vision to life? What if the brilliance was solely his father's? Pressure mounted as Jake wrestled with mounting expectations. His childhood friend, a sought-after mechanical engineer, offered encouragement, gently prodding Jake out of his self-imposed stupor. Yet, every affirmation felt like a crumbling staircase beneath his feet, one misstep away from the abyss of failure. As the days passed, learning more about the corporation's plans only deepened his unease. They were not just any adversaries. They intended to hijack his father's legacy, the same one he had failed to honor. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Standing in the cluttered garage surrounded by metal and memories, Jake breathed in an air thick with dread and determination. The corporation's press event loomed just days away, and the stakes felt insurmountable. Each turn of the wrench echoed the hesitation in his mind. Each deep breath brought on a fresh wave of anxiety. The weight of legacy pressed down on him like an anvil, crushing his will to act. Jake clutched the blueprint, its significance piercing through his ambivalence, a beacon in an enveloping darkness. As the grand unveiling approached, he felt the confines of his fear close in. One decision could either spare the dreams of a steadfast father or submit to a faceless corporation. The sound of cameras clicking and reporters whispering grew in an impending crescendo as it dawned on him. The moment of truth was near. Would he mold his father's dreams into a self-defined success? Or would he let another round of history slip through his fingers, lost to time? The echoes of doubt surrounded him, heavy as dead weight, urging him to turn away from the spotlight. And then, just as he steeled himself, an unexpected voice broke through the crowd, poised to challenge everything he believed about himself. Jake's heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he turned toward the voice that cut through his turmoil. It wasn't just a disruption, it was a challenge. He squinted through the crowd, trying to locate the source. In a world of familiar faces, there stood someone distinctly different. A young woman with fiery determination written across her features, locked eyes with him, her posture unwavering amidst the chaos. "I've been looking for you," she said, her voice resolute yet warm. It was as though she could see through the layers of Jake's hesitation and doubt, and there was a raw honesty in her approach that compelled him to listen. "Your father's dream is not just a blueprint, you know. It's something greater. You can make this happen." As she spoke, Jake's initial reaction was to retreat. Her belief in him felt foreign, a notion he could hardly entertain. However, her hopeful gaze sparked something inside, a familiar flame, reminiscent of his father's unwavering support. The pressure he felt began to shift. Instead of crushing him, it stirred the dormant embers of ambition. "Who are you?" Jake replied, the edge of skepticism woven into his tone. "I'm Sarah. I grew up here too. I've seen what the corporation does. I saw it swallow businesses whole, like an insatiable beast. But I also see potential. I see a revolution in your father's design." The cavalcade of emotions that collided within him threatened to pull him apart. Deep down, he recognized the truth in her words. The blueprint was not merely a relic, but a chance to redefine progress, to stand against the tidal wave of commercialization that threatened to erase his lineage. Yet, fear still gripped him. How could he possibly lead this charge? As days morphed into restless nights, Jake found himself spending hours with Sarah, sharing ideas, refining the plans, and mapping out a path forward. While she illuminated aspects of engineering he had forgotten, he reciprocated by rekindling their shared past, unveiling memories of old victories, and the promise of what could be. He began to realize that he wasn't alone. Together they formed a creative synergy, pushing each other to confront personal limitations. But with every breakthrough came fresh reminders of corporate might. Days blurred into one another, and the looming press event felt like an accelerating freight train. Jake understood that the stakes had escalated. The corporation wasn't simply a monolith. It was a monstrous adversary built on the very fears he battled daily. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, he tapped into a deeper reservoir of resolve. An idea struck him. If they were to unveil the blueprint on that stage, he needed to package it not just as a design, but as a story of resilience and legacy, a living tribute to his father's vision that could inspire others, ignite action, and summon support. This transformation wouldn't merely be about a mechanical contraption, but about reclaiming identity and purpose. With every late-night planning session, Jake discovered a renewed strength within himself. He began to see himself, not merely as his father's son, burdened with expectation, but as an innovator, ready to carve out his own identity. He sought out local investors, rallying people to believe in his idea. Each meeting an exercise in persuasive storytelling and vulnerability. To his surprise, he found encouragement, with each nod of approval fueling his determination. As they prepared their presentation, Jake stood at a precipice where dreams could either flourish or wither. He was no longer just a mechanic circling the drain of mediocrity. He was a leader on the brink of something extraordinary. With the press event only days away, Jake made one last critical decision. The time had come to confront the corporate giant head-on. What had initially felt insurmountable now unfolded into a plan of action that was both exhilarating and terrifying. A low hum of anticipation filled the streets as he practiced his pitch, visualizing the crowd's faces lighting up with realization. Yet again, nagging doubts crept back in. What if the reception was negative? What if he risked everything only to face failure? But perhaps beneath that anxiety lay the greatest revelation. No matter the outcome, he had reclaimed his father's legacy in a way he never expected. He was ready to lean into both the fear and the potential. As he took a deep breath, ready for the next chapter, an unexpected phone call illuminated his screen. It was a familiar number, an invitation that could change everything he had fought for. Jake stared at the screen, the familiar name sending electric currents through his body, his senses amplifying with every passing heartbeat. It was Evan, his father's old business partner. A dark shadow flitted across Jake's mind. A mixture of anxiety and curiosity swirled together. After all these years, why would Evan reach out now? What did he want? Taking a shaky breath, Jake swiped to answer. "Jake?" Evan's voice was gravelly, weighed down by the years since they last spoke. "It's been a long time." "Yeah, it has. What's going on?" Jake struggled to keep his tone even, his heart racing as he braced for a potential confrontation. "I've been following your progress with the blueprint. I want to help you, but we need to meet." A knot of tension formed in Jake's stomach. There was so much history between them, intertwined with regret and loss. Yet he couldn't ignore the glimmer of opportunity nestled within Evan's invitation. "Where?" Jake found himself surprisingly eager to engage. "Let's meet at the old workshop. You remember it?" Jake closed his eyes, instantly transported back to that sacred place. The workshop sat like a shrine holding the soul of his father, a sanctuary of dreams where so many ideas had sprung to life. "Yeah, I remember," he replied quietly, a rush of nostalgia enveloping him. "Good. I'll see you tomorrow then." That night, sleep eluded him as Jake replayed memories of the workshop, filled with laughter, invention, and his father's guiding spirit. He wrestled with doubt, piecing together the tenuous link between Evan's past betrayal and this sudden overture for collaboration. Mixed emotions churned in his gut, and the uncertainty felt heavier than before. He lay awake, determination battling against the shadows of his skepticism. The next day, he arrived at the workshop early, absorbing the palpable energy that hung in the air. Old tools and faded blueprints cluttered the space, each item whispering stories of past aspirations. Jake ran his fingers across a well-worn workbench, feeling a profound connection to every creation that had once breathed life here. When Evan arrived, his presence brought a mixture of familiarity and unease. Jake's instinct told him to trust cautiously, yet he also sensed an undeniable urgency. "Thanks for coming, Jake," Evan said, his voice softer than before. "I know things have been rocky between us. I regretted how things ended. Let's skip the pleasantries, Evan. Why did you call me?" Jake interrupted, his patience thinning. He sought clarity, determined not to dwell in the past. "I want to offer you insight into what your father was developing before it all fell apart. I have documents, prototypes he left behind, knowledge that the corporation must never seize." Jake's heart raced. This was a pivotal moment. The path to reclaiming his father's legacy was suddenly clearer. Yet questions gnawed at him. Why hadn't Evan revealed this information sooner? And could he genuinely be trusted? "Why would you want to help me now?" Jake pressed, wary of deception lurking beneath Evan's offer. "Because I watched your dad's dream die, and now I see the spark in you. I want to make it right," Evan replied, his gaze steady. The weight of the moment settled over Jake, a storm brewing within him. Yet, grasping for resoluteness, he knew he had a choice to make: step into this newfound partnership or continue on a solitary path. "I need time to think," Jake said, his stomach churning with indecision. But even as he spoke, a part of him felt drawn to Evan's proposal, a chance to uncover hidden truths that could reshape everything. With a lingering fear creeping in, Jake considered what lay ahead. This could either be a pivotal moment of redemption, or yet another layer of complication he hadn't anticipated. Hours later, as he sat in quiet contemplation, his phone buzzed with a new message. A conflicted mixture of curiosity and dread surged through him. It was an image of a familiar prototype, one that ignited buried emotions and thoughts. There was no doubt. The stakes had never been higher, and the past had come roaring back. The moment of truth approached, and Jake felt the weight of his father's dreams within his grip. As shadows of the corporate adversary loomed larger, he gathered that reclaiming his legacy might demand more than ambition. It might require confronting the brutal truths of his father's past. With a resolute sense of urgency, Jake prepared for a confrontation he hadn't anticipated. Would this new revelation serve to propel him forward? Or could it unravel everything he had fought to build? The following morning, Jake found himself restless, the previous day's revelations echoing loudly in his mind. He had spent the night oscillating between excitement and apprehension, mapping out every conversation he could have with Evan, weighing what the unexpected partnership might truly mean for his future. Knowing he would need all his wits about him, he cracked open his father's old journals, pages yellowed with time, but brimming with inspiration. He carefully skimmed over his father's notes about innovations, their potential applications, and the spirit of experimentation that seemed to pulse from every entry. As he read, a playful spark ignited within him, a sense of purpose he had almost forgotten. Yet, a nagging doubt remained. Could he stand up to the powerful forces that had subjugated his father's dreams? Jake mulled over the pictures sent by Evan, his father's designs in stark contrast to the slick commercial prototypes that had betrayed their intent. It felt unnatural to compress passion into marketability. As Jake scribbled notes and drew sketches, he envisioned crafting a product that wasn't just functional, but meaningful, an embodiment of his father's true vision. After hours of indecision, he finally made a choice that surprised even him. He decided he would meet Evan, not just to glean whatever knowledge he could, but to confront him. It was time to demand transparency, to sift through the past with a magnifying glass rather than a blurred lens. If there ever was a time to reclaim his father's legacy, now was it. As he drove to the workshop, he let the familiar route soothe him. Yet, the closer he got, the more his doubts swirled. Could he engage Evan without letting past animosities suffocate their present potential? Would emotions clash with the logic he had been rehearsing? Jake parked outside the workshop, noticing the peeling paint and rusted hardware, remnants of against-the-odds invention filled with unspoken histories. With a deep breath, he pushed through the doors. The scent of aged wood and worn machinery enveloped him, propelling him into the nostalgia and weight of his father's creative spirit. The workshop didn't just symbolize inheritance, it reeked of responsibility. Evan was already there, visibly agitated, cluttered papers in front of him. "Jake," he said, looking up. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I said I would think about your offer. I'm here to talk." "No games," Jake replied, suppressing the rising tension. He focused inward, anchoring himself against Evan's presence. "I'm here to provide guidance, to help you navigate your father's legacy," Evan began, but faltered at the intensity in Jake's gaze. "Your guidance came too late for my father. You may claim to come bearing opportunities, but I need the truth. Why did you turn your back on him?" Jake shot back, his voice steady, yet the flames of emotion flickered beneath the surface. Evan's expression darkened, and for a split second, Jake saw the ghost of the man who had once been a partner in innovation, now overshadowed by guilt. "I didn't see it like that. Decisions were made under pressure. I was trying to survive." "That doesn't justify betrayal," Jake interjected. The warmth of camaraderie twisted into a confrontation, and he would not allow Evan to sidestep accountability. With the silence thickening between them, Jake felt his pulse quicken. He hadn't merely shown up for answers. He had come for validation. Each moment they lingered in this fragile confrontation brought a clearer understanding of his father's artistic and emotional sacrifices. Sacrifices he was ready to honor, even if meant demanding truth from an unwilling ally. "Tell me what he was working on. Really. We can't move forward with shadows." Jake pressed, his mind racing, piecing together the fragments of his father's ambition with a fierce clarity. Suddenly, Evan's defenses fell away. "All right," he said hesitantly. "But it's not just about the prototype. There was more to the story, and it could change everything. Jake's heart raced. The path he had chosen now seemed treacherous, with the promise of revelation shimmering just beyond reach. He had confronted Evan, but now they were standing at the precipice of something greater. Secrets began to uncoil, each thread pulling tighter. He leaned in, ready for the truth that could either build or shatter his world. What lay ahead could either forge his destiny or unearth buried calamities. Would he be ready? As Evan hesitated, their eyes locked. Jake felt the familiar pressure of his father's dreams pressing against his chest, an urgency to uncover the miracle buried within their tangled narrations. With everything hanging in the balance, Jake prepared to delve deeper into his father's legacy. The real question loomed. Could he embrace the full extent of the truth, no matter how harrowing? Would he emerge as the visionary he aspired to be, or lose himself in the darker chapters of the story? Evan's hesitation stretched thick in the air, and Jake sensed a turning point. The tension between them felt electric, an unseen current connecting conflicting interests and unspoken histories. Jake's mind buzzed with questions, each one pulling him closer to uncovering what had remained buried for so long. Yet, he recognized a crucial truth within the chaos. This wasn't just about unveiling his father's legacy. It was his own journey of self-discovery. "Tell me everything," Jake demanded softly, his voice steady now, a mixture of determination and vulnerability threading through his words. As he spoke, he realized this was more than an inquiry. It was an unyielding challenge, not only to Evan but to himself. Evan caught his breath, visibly steeling himself. "It's complicated. Your father's last project wasn't merely a prototype. It was a vision. But when the stakes got high, I prioritized the swift profitability of less critical designs." His eyes fell, shame mingling with defiance. "I didn't want to fail us both." Jake's chest tightened. This could crush everything he'd built in his mind about Evan, forging an image of the ally who had betrayed not just a friend, but a family legacy. How could you allow that? These were lives we were talking about, ideas that could change the world. The emotional weight pressed down on him, yet a sliver of clarity cut through the tempest. He finally understood. Evan had sought survival, but at the cost of his father's dreams and, unintentionally, Jake's own aspirations. As Jake stewed in conflicting emotions, he also sensed a new resolve forming. "I can't change the past, Evan, but we can transform its implications. If we are to do this, we need to face it honestly. No more shadows." Evan nodded, albeit reluctantly. "There are things I learned from your father, about design, purpose, and the delicate balance of ambition. But they'll mean nothing if we let old grudges cloud our judgment. Then start fresh." Jake's voice was steady, the intensity of his previous outrage settling into a firm resolve. He took a breath, shifting his stance and facing Evan squarely. "I won't let fear dictate the future. I want to use your insights but need your commitment." For the first time, Evan met Jake's gaze as an equal collaborator, not as a mentor cloaked in guilt. Vulnerability and a hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. "All right, then let's rediscover what your father intended. The prototype isn't just an object, it's a philosophy." Moving around the cluttered workshop, Jake couldn't ignore the flickering images of memories, the joy in his father's laughter, the spark in his eyes as he shared ideas that seemed impossible to others. What Evan offered was an opportunity to channel those lost ideas into a vibrant creation. There was a catharsis in that realization, and with it came excitement, a symbiotic relationship born from hardship. Over the next few hours, dark clouds began to lift. They poured over sketches, unearthing meticulously crafted designs that had gathered dust, ideas rooted in principles of both ethics and innovation. Each detail explored not merely form, but function, a melody composed of imagination and morality. As they worked, Jake felt like he was steering the ship toward the horizon of potential. However, with each discovery, a haunting, nagging question loomed larger. Was he truly ready to undertake the mantle of responsibility that his father had once held? Finally, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, Evan revealed the critical turning point of the last project. Something went wrong, Jake. There was a flaw, an ethical misstep, which was deemed too risky to pursue after the pressure began mounting. Jake's heart dropped. The implications of his father's risky designs echoed against the desires he held close. What was it? He pressed, unsettling curiosity overwhelming him, mingling with dread. Evan's face hardened, shadows of regret falling like curtains around them. It was about harnessing energy in a way never done before. Revolutionary, but perhaps reckless. We could have been great, but... He let the sentence fade, the weight of the unfinished thoughts sinking into the air between them. Jake sensed the gravity of their undertaking. The promise of uncovering something magnificent now equaled the risk of unraveling a dark truth that might obliterate everything he sought to build. Could he channel those revolutionary ideas without falling prey to paternal hubris? Then it's time to face not just the concept, but the reality, Jake said finally, resolving to stride into uncertainty. They had to pursue this, despite the potential for pain. This was not just about their past failures. It was a chance to forge a future on a foundation of integrity. But just as he began to feel the stirrings of hope, the old weight of doubt loomed ominously. The journey toward reclaiming his father's vision felt fraught with peril. What if the revelation was not only difficult, but truly destructive? He was standing at a crossroads, and the path ahead was enshrouded in shadows. What hidden truths would they uncover? And at what cost? Would unearthing the energy-harnessing flaw catapult him forward, or would the burden of that truth keep him shackled to the past? As the atmosphere thickened with unresolved tension, Jake prepared for the next phase of their extraordinary journey, a venture that might reshape both their destinies along the way. The moment of silence hung heavily, a palpable tension that matched the swirling thoughts in Jake's mind. He could feel the weight of two worlds colliding, the innocence of a past intertwined with his father's dreams, and the stark reality born from Evan's revelations. The prototype challenge loomed larger than ever, each minute detail now hinting at more than just mechanical function. They spoke of moral implications, personal values, and the sacrifices made in the name of ambition. "Let's break down what we know piece by piece," Jake finally said, his voice now a calm contrast to the storm internally brewing. Organizing chaos into clarity was essential, a skill his father had mastered. It was time Jake paid homage to that legacy in his own way. Evan's brows furrowed, momentarily indicating doubt mixed with recognition. "All right, let's go back to the basics." He crossed his arms defensively, but shifted his body slightly forward, a subtle cue that he was willing to engage openly now. "Describe to me what you think your father's vision was." The challenge struck Jake like a lightning bolt, igniting consideration he hadn't entirely explored. He closed his eyes briefly, conjuring images of their workshop, of laughter and energy swirling with ideas. It was about more than just technology. It was about sustainability, balance. My father believed in breakthroughs that helped people without compromising our planet. He wanted to reveal the unseen connections that energy has to our lives. With every word, Jake could feel his resolve solidifying. The remnant emotions regarding Evan began to recede, replaced by a newfound determination. Focusing on creating rather than harboring resentment redirected his energy. This wasn't about Evan's past decisions. It was a chance to resurrect something fundamentally valuable. Evan nodded slowly, consideration glimmering in his eyes. "You've articulated what we need to channel. If we can reapproach the flawed concept with those principles in mind, it may lead us to a solution where morality and innovation coexist." The idea resonated, sparking a flame of creative urgency in Jake. He reached for a nearby sketchbook, pages already filled with notes from before. Let's iterate. What if we take that flawed energy harnessing concept and pivot? Instead of viewing it as groundbreaking in a reckless sense, what if we restrict its reach to renewable resources? Evan leaned in, visibly intrigued. Are you suggesting we frame an approach focused on accountability? Highlight potential hazards and create safeguards within the design? Exactly. We will explore not just feasibility, but the ethical dimensions of each feature we incorporate, Jake replied, heart pounding with growing enthusiasm. The old shadows of doubt faced the lights of possibility, illuminating a path toward a better future. As they spoke, the workshop transformed in Jake's mind into a canvas for creation. He could envision sketches blending together, strengths of his father's vision merging with modern technology. Realization struck Jake. This endeavor was not just about proving his father wrong or right. It was about forging his own identity and mandate in a world filled with complex dilemmas. But a new fear burrowed within him. What if they unearthed consequences too great to confront? As he entertained questions of morality and innovation, a gnawing anxiety tainted his excitement, a stark reminder of the severity of their undertaking. Could genuine ideals survive the cutthroat landscape of industry ambition? Feeling the crunch of pressure tightening around him, Jake shook off doubts. Facing the shadows meant possibly discovering his greatest strength, his father's legacy infused with his new vision. A plan began to crystallize in his mind, strategies layering upon one another. The deeper he dove into his thoughts, the clearer the path forward became. But with that clarity came the knowledge that he was voluntarily entering uncharted territory. Let's start with a framework for our design today. We will focus on integrating a fail-safe in the harnessing mechanism to ensure safety, not just from a technical standpoint, but from an ethical perspective, Evan suggested, fervor igniting his voice. Jake grinned, feeling the throes of collaboration building between them again. Two minds joining forces to restore a legacy both cherished and tarnished. And let's also prioritize this framework's accessibility, ensuring no one is left on the sidelines of this innovation. The glow of inspiration filled the air, but beneath the surface, the doubts clung tighter, whispering warnings of unseen dangers. As they delved back into sketches, Jake couldn't shake the intense anticipation building within. What thoughts lingered in the shadows, waiting to emerge? Would they brave the realities of the prototype, or would it lead to those buried truths Jake had yet to confront about himself and his father? The spark ignited within him was only the beginning. The concept of a new beginning felt tantalizingly close, but shadowed with unseen risks. Resolved to build a future he could stand behind, he forged ahead into the unknown, knowing he had only scratched the surface of what lay ahead. Jake's fingers danced over the pages, sketching designs that pulsated with his father's spirit. Intertwined circuitry and organic lines took shape, forging a connection between technology and nature. Each stroke elevated his confidence, a synthesis of creativity and conviction guiding him toward an innovative horizon. Yet, despite the electric fervor in the workshop, unease festered beneath, each unacknowledged doubt a potential landmine. As afternoon light filtered through the grimy windows, Edgar, an old colleague of Jake's father, strolled in unannounced. The familiar figure wore a weathered expression that spoke volumes, showcasing years of experience mingled with tempered ambition. "Morning, Jake. I heard you've taken the reins on the prototype project. Bold move," he greeted, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Jake nodded, sensing a subtext. "Trying to carry on my father's legacy," he replied, the sincerity of his words rippling against an underlying anxiety. Jake felt the weight of past conversations echoing through the air between them. Layers of tales about running a company steeped in ethics. Edgar's brow furrowed as he reached down to examine the sketches sprawled across the table. "It's not just about building something that works, you know. What you're considering here can disrupt lives, bringing power or destruction. His somber tone momentarily punctured Jake's enthusiasm. The remark stirred an unsettling whirlpool in Jake's mind. I can't ignore the potential this has to help people. He countered defensively, his voice rising slightly, defense mechanisms barricading his vulnerability. Of course not. But the tech world doesn't always care about motive. Edgar pressed, leaning back against the workbench in a seemingly relaxed gesture. Yet the tension in his stance revealed more. You must tread carefully. History is full of bright ideas eclipsed by greed. Jake's heart raced. There was truth in Edgar's cautionary words. The industry was ruthless, an arena where noble intentions often withered under economic pressure. He found himself at a crossroads, torn between emotional investments, pride in his father's ideals, and the pragmatic dark side lurking around every corner. Would you still be interested in guiding me through this? He inquired, yearning for wisdom that might serve as a compass through uncharted waters. Edgar paused, weighing the question. I can offer perspective, but you must check your core values at the door if you plan to survive. This is about equilibrium, adjusting your compass constantly. A fleeting grief clouded his eyes, the ghost of young dreams frayed by reality. Jake absorbed the words, a storm brewing in his mind. If hope were a guiding star, awareness of inherent risks was the necessary anchor. He recognized that he had to cultivate resilience in the face of daunting consequences, shaping both technology and himself to withstand inevitable challenges. With renewed intensity, he grabbed another sheet and sketched a new feature, a monitoring system embedded within the prototype to continuously evaluate its environmental impact. What if we devise a way to monitor not just output, but the ripple effects of our innovation, a living audit, if you will? Interesting approach, Edgar noted, intrigue igniting briefly before his skepticism settled back in. Balance isn't merely in design, Jake. It's about decision-making frameworks. Will stakeholders agree? A wave of uncertainty washed over Jake. His aspiration for innovation collided with the practical repercussions. Envisioning meeting rooms filled with skeptical investors made him question whether they were ready to confront the ideals he demanded. Was it realistic to integrate ethics alongside profitability? Let's draft a proposal, Jake finally stated with resolve, bile of doubt mingling with his determination. He would define their project not just through functionality, but through philosophy. A project manifesting values he wished to uphold, intending to prove conventional wisdom about industry ambition wrong. As they began developing the proposal, Edgar's reservations lingered in the background, an uninvited specter. Time proved an ever-increasing pressure. Months passed, ticking ominously, each moment a reminder that transformative breakthroughs could either elevate or consume. Just as they decided on their next steps, the door swung open violently. The brash entrance revealed a group of investors, fury and discontent radiating off them. We need to discuss the prototype, their lead stakeholder intoned, his eyes narrowing dangerously. There are profits at stake. Jake's heart plummeted, the precarious balance he sought hanging by a thread. The adversities were now pressing down upon him with merciless weight. Would he adhere to his steadfast convictions, or hint at compromise in the face of overwhelming pressure? The moment had arrived when Jake would have to confront the very essence of what he believed in. Would he dare to protect his father's legacy, or would the industry ethos reshape him into someone entirely different? The stakes had risen to a level he could never have anticipated. The investors crowded around Jake's workstation, their dissatisfaction palpable like static tension in the air. Their eyes, sharp, probing, sought not only answers, but also a sense of control. Jake felt as if he had just been thrust into the spotlight, and the weight of expectation bore down on him like a crushing weight. Jake, the lead investor, a man with slicked-back hair and a tailored suit that seemed too tight for his ambitions, began, his voice dripping with authority. We understand you want to develop something that balances innovation and ethics, but let's get to the point. When can we see overwhelming profits? Each word felt like a strike against Jake's convictions. They were operating from a paradigm entirely different from his own. Profitability versus purpose. He'd known this moment would come, yet the reality of standing before them under such scrutiny gnawed at the fibers of his resolve. "I believe we can create something impactful," Jake replied, his tone steadier than he felt. "This prototype isn't solely about immediate financial gains. It's about establishing a responsible legacy. We need to ensure that what we create isn't just effective, but also sustainable." A collective scoff rippled across the investors. "Sustainable?" another voice echoed. "What does that even mean in terms of our return on investment? We didn't just pour capital into this for idealistic musings. We want clear forecasts, projections, and metrics. Numbers." Each additional jab pierced Jake's confidence further. Was he truly equipped to navigate this landscape? He grasped tightly to the vision his father had for their work, yet uncertainty lurked in the shadows of his mind. The investors were intent on inserting themselves into a narrative where ethics were mere afterthoughts. "What if we launch a phased rollout?" Jake interjected, an idea suddenly blossoming among his swirling doubts. "Present a model that tracks initial successes alongside the measures of social and environmental impact. We can market its appeal, giving investors credible validation within the industry, while also honoring the principles driving the design." His proposal hung in the air, competing with the skepticism rolling off the investors. Could this middle ground satisfy both their thirst for profits and provide him the room to uphold his father's ideals? The main investor paused, considering. A phased rollout with transparency might capture public interest, but how do you intend to operationalize this? Do the other stakeholders share this vision? Jake felt the suffocating weight of the inquiry. Was it enough to present an idea grounded in morality without the backing of all involved? He needed Edgar's insight, but the old mentor's absence felt like a chasm in his strategy. In the silence that followed, he caught himself grappling with the realization that he had too much at stake to leave it to chance. The crossroads lay starkly before him, every choice leading to uncharted territory. "I'll make the connections," he affirmed, gathering momentum from within. "I'll engage the other stakeholders and outline the proposal for a model that tracks success in meaningful ways, balancing ethics with profitability. This prototype won't just be another product. It will set a standard." The investors exchanged glances, and while skepticism still lingered, Jake sensed a flicker of intrigue as they conferred among themselves. The tension was palpable. Each second felt loaded with transformative potential. It was a fragile moment, but he held on tightly to the possibility of bridging their worlds. As their dialogue enveloped him, Jake felt an awakening, a quiet strength whispering from deep within. For the first time since entering this maelstrom, he dared to believe he could carve a new pathway that didn't shroud his father's legacy in shame and greed. He could navigate these turbulent waters. But this was only the beginning. External stakes were heightening, and with his ambitions stirring, Jake understood that he needed to harmonize all his aspirations, bringing Edgar along for the ride. Just as the investors seemed inclined toward his rationale, the door swung open yet again. Another figure stepped into the room, but this time it was someone unexpected, Maya, a fiercely intelligent rival innovator from a competing firm. "What's going on here?" she asked, her gaze darting skeptically from Jake to the investors, unmistakably intrigued by the heated atmosphere. Jake's heart raced. Here came another challenge, one that could either reinforce his convictions or force him into a defensive posture. Could she be an ally, or was she another potential adversary? The stakes had escalated once more, and now the pressure of the moment felt almost unbearable. With a firm breath, Jake prepared to confront the next unfolding reality. Defining not only his vision for the prototype, but also the growing tide of external and internal conflicts converging around him, he sensed his journey had only just begun. The true test was about to manifest before him. Maya stepped confidently into the room, her presence striking like thunder in a calm sky. Jake read the tension in the air instantly, His heart pounded louder in time with her approach. She was well known not just for her brilliance, but for her cutthroat tactics. An unexpected ally was one thing, but a rival capable of undermining his vision felt disquietingly imminent. "Jake," she started, her voice cool, calculating. "I couldn't help but overhear. A phased rollout, huh? You think they'll bite? Ethical gadgets don't typically eclipse the bottom line in this industry." Jake struggled to maintain composure, knowing he couldn't afford to show any sign of weakness. Instead, he embraced her scrutiny. "I think there's potential for profitability while maintaining our ethical stance. It's about redefining success." She narrowed her eyes, as if dissecting a specimen under a magnifying glass. Redefining success, or just delaying the inevitable? Nobody invests without expecting results, and fast. I wouldn't want to see you chasing an idealistic fantasy. Her skepticism pushed against Jake's resolve. Was he romanticizing the journey? "Look, if we show quantifiable results alongside our ethical commitments, we can shift the narrative. It's more than just making money. It's about setting a benchmark in our industry." The investors surrounding them seemed transfixed by the unfolding dynamic. Uncertainty flickered in their eyes, but so did a spark of curiosity. The room held its breath, wavering between doubt and intrigue. Maya leaned in closer. "But what if they don't see it? What if they want those profits up front, and they abandon you before your prototype even has a chance to breathe?" A new anxiety gripped Jake. He glanced at the investors, faces stern, their patience thinning like an over-revved engine. Could he convince them of a vision that relied on conviction rather than instant returns? He focused, drawing strength from that quiet power he had felt earlier. If we don't pivot our approach, we risk becoming obsolete. Consumers want to invest in products that reflect their values. A phased rollout will provide credibility to our aims while bringing stakeholders along. We present the impact metrics they crave, while staying true to our mission. Maya straightened, her demeanor shifting subtly. "Interesting tactic, Jake. If you're confident in this approach, I'm willing to assist. But fair warning, the competitors in our field aren't likely to play nice." He allowed hope to unfurl cautiously within him. Perhaps Maya's involvement could fortify his plan, easing the investors' concerns. If she joined forces with him, it might lend a credibility he desperately wanted to establish. "Let's sharpen this vision together. We can draft a clear model that showcases both sustainability metrics and financial projections." Her lips twitched into an almost imperceptible smirk, and for a moment, Jake felt the unlikeliest sense of teamwork brewing between them. "Fine. Let's see what you have in mind. But I'll be the first to tell you if it's a fool's errand." Drawing together the loose ends of the room's energy, Jake confronted the investors again. "If we address both profitability and ethical guidelines, we create a product that resonates with today's market. A phased rollout allows us to adjust based on real-time feedback without overwhelming our capacity or betraying our values." Jake's voice swelled, a conviction fortified with each word. This wasn't merely about the prototype anymore. It was about shifting perceptions. As the investors leaned forward slightly, an air of tension flickered, hinting at newfound resolve beneath their skepticism. Just then, the lead investor broke the silence. "You've put forth a compelling argument, but it's a high-risk strategy. If it falters, it won't just be your reputation. It'll be ours." Jake felt the weight of that statement settle around him, tightening like a noose. This was no longer just about proving a vision. He was entering an arena where every decision had ramifications well beyond his initial ambitions. Would he be able to manage this growing complexity? Maya interjected, a spark of competitive energy now coursing through her voice. "We can devise a plan that secures immediate metrics that could satisfy investors while working towards Jake's ethical goals. If we do this right, we can pivot any setbacks to our advantage." With that, a plan began to form. The night was still young, but the road ahead had never felt more perilous. Jake steeled himself, bracing for a storm of challenges ahead. Would they be able to turn conviction into success? Or would the growing doubts drown them before they even launched? In the depths of uncertainty, Jake realized he now had to navigate the dynamics not only of investors, but also of a powerful rival turned ally. Every step forward carried its own weight, and the stakes had never been more daunting. What seemed to be a collaborative endeavor threatened to unravel at any moment. As the meeting continued, Jake knew the most critical choice remained unmade. He had to decide just how much of his core principles he was willing to compromise to achieve that vision. Just then, the lights flickered ominously, signaling a storm beyond the walls. Jake could feel the electricity in the air, not just from the weather. To him, it felt like a prelude to inevitable confrontation. Would he be able to withstand the brewing storm of ethical dilemmas and the looming shadows of betrayal? The storm outside raged with unrelenting fury, whipping against the windows of the workshop like an unstoppable force. Within these four walls, Jake found himself carried away by a tempest of uncertainties, choice by choice, leading to possibilities both exhilarating and terrifying. As tensions deepened in the room, Jake's gaze shifted from the ominous winds outside to the determined faces around the table. The investors, once dismissive, now seemed to ponder Maya's suggestion, feeling the stirrings of an idea they hadn't anticipated. Fueled by the energy crackling within, Jake spoke again, his voice stronger than he ever believed it could be. What if we transform this launch into a campaign, an event? We can frame it not just as a product introduction, but as a movement towards ethical innovation. Interest peaked among the investors, dialogues shifted, questions emerged. How to craft a narrative that tugged at not just wallets, but hearts. Jake sensed momentum spinning subtly, and with it, a glimmer of hope. The electric hum in the air felt contagious. For the first time, Jake felt as though he stood firmly on the bridge between ideals and pragmatism. With each idea he shared, he saw flickers of recognition in their eyes. Imagine a platform where we can educate consumers about the impact of every purchase and how it feeds the hope for a sustainable future. If we put those ethical standards at the forefront, we won't just sell a product, we'll sell a vision. Maya leaned closer, inspired. Engaging consumers can be done through storytelling video content, showcasing the direct community impact of our project, whether that's job creation, sustainability initiatives, or technological breakthroughs. We can create our own narrative right in front of them. The investors exchanged glances, the glimmer of skepticism replaced by intrigue. As if pulled by the tide, Jake felt the wind of change lift him higher. We announced not only the prototype itself, but a commitment, reinforcing that each step of the product lifecycle is traceable, sustainable, and transparent. With renewed vigor, they explored the implications of calling back to fundamental values, the original blueprint guiding each decision forward. Each discussion became fortifying as they shaped a future where innovation didn't blindly chase profit, but rather embraced responsibility and inclusivity. Hours melted into moments as ideas flowed, decisions were made, and clarity emerged within the chaos. By nightfall, a tangible outline of a strategy lay before them, exciting and, yes, full of risks, but brimming with potential. With hearts racing, Jake could hardly contain the surge of adrenaline coursing through him. They were not merely creating a prototype. They were declaring a new standard in the industry. The very moment he had feared being his downfall became his catalyst to rise. As they prepared to wrap up their session, Evan's absence echoed in Jake's mind, yet a part of him felt prepared to engage with his former mentor in a different light. Just as the meeting ended, he turned to Maya and the investors, settling into a resolute stillness. I need to reach out to Evan. He'll need to understand this new direction. We can't proceed without addressing the legacy and the responsibility that it bears. The group nodded, and Jake stood up, the crushing weight of hesitation dissolving into determination. With resolve propelling him forward, He dialed Evan's number as the winds continued to howl outside, setting direction towards reconciliation and growth. The call connected, and he could hear Evan's hesitant voice on the other end, timid yet lingering with curiosity. "Jake? Evan, we've redefined our approach. I want to discuss the next steps together." The warmth of mutual respect followed each word. Two men bound by legacy and a growing respect for the possibilities that lay ahead. One dedicated to using the past to reshape the future. "Fine," Evan replied, the weight of the past palpable in the space between. "What are you thinking?" Jake seized the moment, the urgency in his heart spilling forth in hope and resolution. "We will honor the vision my father had, not just for profit, but for societal impact. It's time to lead with responsibility." In that exchange, Jake realized he had taken the final leap from uncertainty into clarity. He no longer saw himself as merely occupying his father's space or legacy. He had become a steward of progression, an architect of change anchored by values that he steadfastly believed in. And with that, a fire ignited in him, a flame of conviction that no storm could extinguish. As he wrapped up the call, the winds outside abated slightly, as if the universe itself acknowledged his shift in purpose. Jake felt a deep sense of satisfaction wash over him, a completion he had long searched for. With every inch he progressed, he felt the empowerment bubbling within, a true transformation that defined the essence of his journey. He had finally excised doubt. He had conquered the shadows of his past and embraced the complexity of the future. Most important of all, he had learned that carrying the legacy was not about preserving it untouched, but breathing life into it, reshaping its vision in a way that honored its original spirit, while boldly forging ahead. As he stepped away from the workshop table, the storm had cleared, leaving behind a brilliant moonlit sky, a testament to resilience and renewal. This was merely the beginning of Jake Reynolds' journey toward impact, innovation, and integrity. An enduring legacy that would not just withstand the test of time, but flourish against it. The company had turned a corner, his father's spirit ignited in new light. Together, driven by a renewed purpose, they would ascend heights that surpassed any previously imagined. And with each step, Jake was unwaveringly certain. He had become the man his father would be proud of. As the realization solidified within him, the urge for the audience rings clear. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.